My name is Merle Taggart, and I'm 67 years old. Paducah is the only town I've ever called home. It's where I was born, and it's where I'll probably die. That used to be a comforting thought. Now it's just bitterness. I've worked my entire life as a nurse at West Kentucky Baptist Hospital. 38 years of night shifts, hundreds of patients, thousands of shots. I remember coming home at 6 in the morning, broken with fatigue, and the children already awake in their cribs. Janine was 5 and Fletcher was 3. I would make them breakfast, get Janine ready for kindergarten, and then fall into bed for 4 hours while my neighbor, Mrs. Brooks, watched Fletcher. Our old house on Woodland Drive, on the very edge of town, where the noise of Highway 24 mingled with the singing of crickets, Kenneth had inherited from his parents. It was 2 stories high, with peeling paint and a creaky porch. It was always too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter. But it was our home, where our children grew up, where we gathered on holidays. 10 years ago, Kenneth passed away, a heart attack on the job. His co-workers said he just sat down on a crate, grabbed his chest, and fell. The doctors said he died instantly. That was the first time I thought that we had never really gotten to know each other in 30 years of marriage. Sometimes I think the only thing we really had in common was our children. When he died, the house was left to me. The insurance covered the balance of the mortgage, and for the first time, I felt wealthy. Retired at 62, I thought I'd finally get some rest. Maybe start the garden I'd always dreamed of. But it didn't work out that way. Janine divorced her husband Ben 5 years ago. She's left with 2 children, Amberly 15 and Lawson 13. She works as a receptionist in a dental clinic, but money is always tight. At first, she just came to visit on Sundays. Then she started leaving the kids with me when she went out with her boyfriend. And then she started coming over with bags of groceries that I had to pay for. Mom, you know Ben's behind on child support again, and Amberly's prom is in 2 weeks and she needs a dress. I'll pay you back next month, she said, but never did. Fletcher married Tammy, a girl from Metropolis. They now have 3 children, twins Shay and Rowan, 10 years old, and little Willow, who is only 4. Fletcher works as a supervisor at the same shipyard where his father once worked. Tammy doesn't work, takes care of the kids, and, as she likes to say, makes their house cozy, which in practice means constant renovations, new furniture, and expensive toys for the kids. Every month, Fletcher calls me with another problem. The car broke down. The roof is leaking. Willow needs a speech therapist who is not covered by insurance, and every time, I open my skinny wallet and give the last of it. I'm not complaining, really. They're my children, my grandchildren. Isn't that what we live for, to help our family? But sometimes, when I sit alone in my bedroom, listening to the wind rustling through the old window frames, I get a strange feeling of emptiness. It's as if my whole life has been spent caring for others, and I've lost myself somewhere along the way. Last Sunday was Fletcher's birthday, 41 years old. They decided to celebrate at Chuck's, the only place in Paducah that serves decent steaks. I baked his favorite molasses pie, even though my hands are no longer the same. Arthritis twists my fingers during the colder months. I spent almost my entire monthly pension on a gift, fishing tackle he'd wanted for a long time. I wore my best dress, a navy blue one with small flowers bought while Kenneth was still alive. I combed my hair, even put on lipstick for the first time in months. When I entered the restaurant, they were already seated at a table in the far corner. Fletcher, Tammy, Janine, and her new boyfriend, Daryl, all 5 grandchildren. I noticed Fletcher roll his eyes when he saw me, and Tammy leaned over to Janine and whispered something. They weren't expecting me so early. I was half an hour early, since the bus I usually took was on a different schedule on Sunday. "Grandma's here," shouted little Willow, the only one who was genuinely excited to see me. "Hi, Mom." Fletcher stood up and hugged me awkwardly. He smelled like beer. We thought you'd be here later. The bus runs differently today. I put the box of pie on the table and handed him the present. Happy birthday, son. He took the package, but didn't even look inside, just set it next to the chair. Thanks, Mom. Sit over there, next to Lawson. Lawson, my 13-year-old grandson, didn't even look up from his phone. Amberly puckered her lips when I sat down next to her and moved away. You smell like old perfume, Grandma, she said. Amberly. Janine shushed her, but unconvincingly, with a smile. The waitress brought the menu, and I stared at the prices in horror. The cheapest steak was $27. I had only $35 left in my wallet, 20 of which I'd been saving for medication. I'll just have the salad, I said, slamming down the menu. God, Mom, don't start. Janine sighed. We're at a party. Take whatever you want. Fletcher's paying for it. Fletcher gave her an annoyed look but didn't say anything. That's right, Grandma. Don't be shy. Daryl, Janine's boyfriend, winked at me. He was about 10 years younger than her, with a gold chain around his neck and an unpleasant smile. Order yourself some lobster. Have a blast. Don't be silly, Daryl, Tammy said. Mom knows we don't have a lot of money, don't we, Mom? I'll take the chicken salad, I said quietly, and water. Dinner continued in the same vein. The kids were yammering. The adults were discussing some gossip about people I didn't know. No one paid any attention to me except Willow, who climbed into my lap and talked about her kindergarten. When the cake arrived and Fletcher blew out the candles, Tammy suddenly asked, Did you remember to make a doctor's appointment, Mom? I've reminded you 3 times already. What doctor? I didn't understand. The gerontologist I told you about. He specializes in dementia. I don't have dementia, Tammy. I felt the color flood my face. I just forget things sometimes. It's normal at my age. You forgot Shay and Rowan's birthday party last month, Fletcher interjected. You showed up with no presents and a card that said, Happy 10th birthday, even though they turned 9. Yeah, I was sure they were 10, I mumbled. And you keep forgetting to take your pills, Janine added. I found a whole bunch of unopened bottles in your bathroom. They're the wrong pills, I tried to explain. Dr. Pierce prescribed me new ones because the old ones gave me a rash. See? Tammy waved her hands. She doesn't even remember what pills she was prescribed. And she gives the kids candy all the time, even though I've asked her 1,000 times not to. Janine interjected. Lawson could get diabetes, and the whole class is laughing at his weight. Lawson, hearing his name, finally got off the phone. It's not because of the candy. It's because Grandma keeps trying to feed me. You're so skinny. Have another cutlet. And then you're the first one to say, I'm fat. I never said you were fat, I countered. I'm just worried that you're not eating right. All those chips and sodas. Here we go again. Fletcher threw his napkin on the table. Mom, can't you just accept that we decide how to raise our children? Your constant advice and meddling? I'm not meddling, I tried to defend myself. I just want to help. Help? Janine laughed bitterly. Do you know that Amberly is still ashamed of the time you came to her school with a forgotten lunchbox? She was 14 then, Mom. 14. All her friends thought she was a little kid who couldn't take care of herself. It's true, Grandma. Amberly spoke up for the first time. I still get teased about it, and because you dress like a hobo all the time. Amberly! Janine was really mad this time. Don't you talk to your grandmother like that. What? It's true. You talk like that all the time when she's away. There was a heavy silence at the table. I stared at my half-eaten salad, unable to look up. Listen, Mom. Fletcher finally broke the silence. We all love you. You know that. But sometimes you just suffocate us with your concern. I still can't go fishing without you reminding me to bring a sweater and mosquito repellent, like I'm still 5 years old. And remember how you ruined my relationship with David? Janine picked up on that. He was the first normal man since Ben, and you kept telling him he had weird looks and that he had bad eyes. He couldn't take your innuendo and left. He did look at the kids weird, I said quietly, especially Amberly. God, Mom, you're paranoid. Janine slammed her palm on the table, making forks clink. Just admit that you can't stand having anyone in my life but you and the kids. And you never approved of me, Tammy said suddenly, always looking like I wasn't good enough for your precious son. Do you know how many times I've cried because of your snide remarks about my parenting? I never. Tammy, honey, are you sure Willow needs so much sugar? Tammy, the kids need more walks. Tammy, why are you buying them so many toys? She mocked my voice. And then you go and sneak them candy and buy them anything they ask for, undermining my authority. I felt tears come to my eyes. Was I really like that? Did my love and care really feel like control and interference? And that's not to mention the way you try to play on guilt when it comes to money. Fletcher continued. Oh, I can't afford a new coat. I gave all my money to you kids. It's like we're forcing you. Fletcher, I never. You ruined our lives. Get out, Amberly shouted, and everyone at the table went silent. I looked at them, their angry, flushed faces, at Fletcher, my boy, who now looked just like his father in his moments of anger, Janine, my proud, stubborn girl, at my grandchildren, who looked at me like I was a stranger. Even little Willow had slid off my lap and was now hiding behind her mother. You'd better go, Mom, Fletcher said quietly. We all need to cool down. I silently stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the restaurant. They didn't follow me, didn't try to stop me. I heard the conversation resume behind me, someone laughing. A light drizzle drizzled outside. I wandered to the bus stop, clutching my wallet with $35 in it, all I had left until my next pension in 2 weeks. The bus came almost immediately. I sat at the window and watched the raindrops drip down the glass, blurring the lights of Paducah at night. A strange calm swept over me, as if something inside had finally broken, freeing me from invisible chains. At home, I kicked off my shoes, walked to my bedroom, and lay down without undressing. The ceiling above my bed was cracked. Fletcher had promised to fix it 3 years ago, but never did. I lay there thinking about what had happened today, about the words they'd said to me, that they were right. I had indeed smothered them with my care, my advice, my meddling. But I did it out of love. Isn't that what mothers do? The morning after that ill-fated dinner was strangely quiet. I woke up earlier than usual, at 5 o'clock, before dawn. I lay in bed, listening to the ticking of the old clock on my bedside table. I'd bought it with Kenneth at a flea market when we were first married. It was always 3 minutes fast, but Kenneth never got around to fixing it. Outside the window, the first birds were singing, and somewhere in the distance, a freight train rumbled by. I thought about how no one had called me last night. No one had asked me how I'd gotten home. It was as if I no longer existed for them. You ruined our lives. Get out. Amberly's words echoed in my head. I knew she was just an angry teenager, that she didn't mean everything she said. But that knowledge didn't lessen the pain, because the others were silent. No one contradicted her. No one stood up for me. I got out of bed, walked over to the mirror above the dresser. The gray hair I still stubbornly dye brown every 3 weeks. Wrinkles around my eyes and mouth. A map of my life, my smiles and tears. When did I have time to get so old? In that moment, looking at my reflection, I made a decision. Or maybe it had been ripening inside me for a long time, and now it just came out. I would go to the bank, withdraw all my money, and disappear. That thought should have scared me, but instead of fear, I felt strangely relieved, like I'd dropped a heavy backpack I'd been carrying around for years. A plan formed quickly. I showered, dressed in my best pantsuit, the one I'd worn to Kenneth's funeral. I had my usual breakfast of oatmeal, washed the dishes, and then she started packing her bag. What do you take with you when you decide to disappear at 67? ID, of course, some clothes, a picture of my parents and one of my kids when they were little and still loved me unconditionally, a jewelry box, not because it's expensive, but because each holds a memory. The ring Kenneth gave me for our 20th wedding anniversary, earrings from Janine when she was 12, a bracelet from Fletcher made in a school circle. I hesitated over the jewelry box. If I took it, they might think I'd run off to sell the jewelry. In the end, I took out only my parents' picture and put it in my wallet. The rest stayed in the jewelry box. At 9 o'clock, I left the house, locked the door, and hid the key under a flower pot like I always did. I took the bus to the city center where my bank was. I need to withdraw all the money from my account, I said to the young woman behind the counter. Her name tag read Zoe. The whole account, Mrs. Taggart? She asked in surprise. Maybe you'd like to take off just part of it? No, all of it, I answered firmly, and closed the account. May I ask why? If you have any problems, we can. No problem. I'm moving in with my sister in Florida. It's warmer for my old bones. I don't have a sister. Never had one. But Zoe nodded understandingly and asked for identification. I held out my driver's license to her. You have $12,346.27 in your account. That's a pretty hefty amount of cash. Are you sure you don't want to transfer it to another account? Cash, please. Zoe went into the back room and returned 10 minutes later with an envelope and the bank manager. He tried to convince me that I might be a victim of fraud, but I insisted. Eventually, I was given the money. I had never seen so much money at once before. It was my life savings. What was left of Kenneth's insurance policy, my modest pension that I'd been saving all these years, denying myself new clothes, trips, little pleasures. When I left the bank, I went straight to the bus station. I bought a ticket to Louisville, but got off in Cairo, a small town on the Kentucky-Illinois border. There, I went into the bus station restroom and changed into jeans and a simple shirt. I put my hair up in a bun and wore sunglasses I'd bought at the gift store. Then I took off all my jewelry, the wedding ring I'd kept on for 30 years, the earrings I wore every day. I felt naked without them, but it was necessary. In Cairo, I bought a return ticket to Padyuki, but I got off not at the central station, but at a stop near a shopping center on the outskirts. From there, I took a cab to the Bluebird Motel, the cheapest place I could remember. The Bluebird was a one-story building with a faded neon sign and peeling paint. I often drove past it on my way to the hospital and always thought only desperate people would stop there. Now I was one of them. The room cost $45 a night if you rented for a week. I paid a month in advance to get a discount. The desk clerk, a heavy-set man with thinning hair and a ponytail, didn't ask any questions or ask for identification, just took the money and held out the key. Number 17 at the very end. It's quieter there. The room was better than I expected, small but clean, with a double bed, a TV, and a tiny kitchen in the corner, a two-burner stove and a mini fridge. The bathroom revealed a shower but no bathtub, with cracked tiles on the floor and a stained mirror. I sat down on the bed, realizing what I had done. I had disappeared, gone from the lives of my children and grandchildren, left the house I'd lived in most of my life, and now I'm sitting in a cheap motel on the outskirts of my hometown like a fugitive. Panic came over me all of a sudden. What have I done? Where will I go? How will I live? I'm 67 years old. I have arthritis and early cataracts. I grabbed my phone, ready to call Janine or Fletcher, to admit I'd done something stupid, to ask them to pick me up. But then I remembered their faces at the restaurant, their words, and I realized I couldn't. I didn't sleep well that night. The mattress was too soft, the pillow too high. There was muffled music and laughter coming from the room next door all night. In the morning, I went out to the nearest store and bought hair dye a russet color, 2 shades lighter than my usual brown. Back at the motel, I closed myself in the bathroom and read the instructions carefully. The last time I'd changed my hair color was when I was 18. The result surprised me. In the mirror, I looked like an unfamiliar woman, with lighter hair, without the usual jewelry, wearing jeans instead of the usual skirts. I looked different. The next step was a new phone. I went to the mall and bought the cheapest prepaid cell phone I could find. The salesman, a young guy with colorful hair, patiently explained to me how to use it. "Is this for your grandson?" he asked when I paid. "No, it's for me." "Cool," he smiled. "My grandmother still uses a landline phone with a disc dial." I didn't bother to tell him that I was the same yesterday. Back at the motel, I started looking for a job. At my age, the options were limited, especially without the ability to provide references. I couldn't go back into medicine. I'd be recognized immediately. But I knew how to handle money, could stand on my feet for hours at a time, and wasn't afraid to talk to people. That same day, I got a job as a cashier at a convenience store called Quick Stop, 2 blocks from the motel. The owner, an elderly Korean man named Mr. Park, was happy to find an employee for the night shift. "Nobody wants to work at night," he explained, "especially women, afraid of robbers." "I've been a night shift nurse for 38 years. I've seen worse things than muggers." Mr. Park gave me an appraising look and nodded. "You start tomorrow, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., $8 an hour." It was a paltry wage, but I didn't need much. Food, motel bills, sometimes new clothes. I had savings, and if I saved, I could live for a couple years. Working at the Quick Stop was monotonous, but not difficult. I punched merchandise, restocked cigarettes and lottery tickets, and wiped down the counters. At night, cab drivers, night laborers, and the occasional traveler came in. The most surprising discovery for me was that no one recognized me. People I treated in the hospital, neighbors, even family friends, all passed by without a second glance. It was as if my new hair color and clothes made me invisible. But I wasn't the only invisible person in Paducah. One night, about a week after I started work, an older man walked into the store. Tall, thin, with a neat gray beard and deep wrinkles around his eyes. He bought coffee, a pack of crackers, and a newspaper. "Cold night," he said, holding out the money. "Yes, it's supposed to freeze," I said, counting out my change. He looked at me carefully. "Are you new here?" "Yes, I'm new here." "Welcome to the night shift. My name is Harold. I come here every night. Insomnia." "Merle." I introduced myself, giving my real name for the first time in a week. The next night, Harold came again, and the next. Each time he bought the same thing: coffee, crackers, newspaper, and each time we'd exchange a few words. Gradually, I learned his story. Harold was a history teacher at Paducah Community College, widowed 3 years ago, living alone in a small apartment near the store. Couldn't sleep at night, so he walked around town. "Paducah is very different at night," he once said. "During the day, everyone is rushing, pushing, making noise, but at night, you can see its true soul." One particularly quiet night, when the rain was drizzling outside the window and there had been no customers for 2 hours, Harold lingered at the counter. "I see you're the invisible kind, too," he said suddenly. "I beg your pardon?" "Invisible? People no one notices, mostly old people like us, but there are young people too, people who've fallen off the grid, the homeless, the mentally ill, lonely widows and widowers. Those in hiding or those who have been turned away? I didn't know what to say. He hit the mark, but I wasn't ready to admit it out loud. Don't worry, I'm not prying. Harold held up his hands in a calming gesture. I just wanted to tell you that there's a whole underground of people like us here in Paducah. People who can't be seen, but who see everything. He walked away, leaving me confused. Is there really a whole community of fugitives like me in Paducah? I didn't go to the library that Thursday, and I didn't go the next one either, but the thought of the invisibles never left me. I began to notice them, an elderly woman who fed the pigeons in the park every day, a man with a long gray beard who played the harmonica near the supermarket, a full-figured lady in bright dresses who sat in a cafe by the window for hours, watching passers-by. My new life was gradually taking shape. I worked nights, slept during the day, occasionally went out to the store or laundromat. I didn't call my kids. I didn't check old mail. I didn't drive to my neighborhood. I became someone else, Merle from the night store, the quiet woman with dyed hair who never talks about her past. Sometimes, lying sleepless in my motel room, I thought about my home, about the garden gnomes I'd collected over the years, the kitchen where I cooked Sunday dinners for the whole family, about the backyard swing where my grandchildren once played. Did they miss me? Did they look for me? Or had they just sold the house and forgotten? But more often than not, I caught myself thinking a strange thought. Hadn't I been invisible before I disappeared? Maybe my family had stopped seeing me long before I physically disappeared from their lives. One night, while sorting through a delivery at the store, I found an old magazine lost between boxes. On the cover was an article, Starting from Scratch, How to Find Yourself After 60. I laughed at the bitter coincidence and put the magazine aside. But then, when the store was empty, I opened it after all. It's never too late to become the person you've always wanted to be. Read the headline of the article. It got me thinking, what did I always want to be? A good mother? I was one, or tried to be, although judging by the kids' words, I failed miserably. A nurse? I'd been one for 38 years and didn't regret it. A wife? I'd been a faithful wife to Kenneth, though our marriage had hardly been a happy one. But what did I want to be for myself, not for others? That question took me by surprise. I had never thought of my own desires as separate from the needs of my family. Maybe that's why it was so easy for me to disappear. Because Merle Taggart, nurse, mother, grandmother, widow, never really existed in her own right. She was only a reflection of other people's expectations. And now, at 67, I have a chance to find out who the real Merle is. It's been almost 4 weeks since I disappeared from my family's life. It's strange how quickly one adjusts to new circumstances. My life now followed a simple rhythm, working the night shift at the quick stop, sleeping during the day, and occasionally taking walks in the previously unknown corners of Paducah. I even started putting money aside, $15 each week, in a small tin cookie box I bought at a second-hand store. That afternoon, I decided to go to the town library. Harold had brought up the Invisible Man meetings again, and although I wasn't going to go there, the thought of spending a few hours among the books seemed tempting. In the hospital, I'd always read between shifts detectives, historical novels, biographies, but since I'd moved into the motel, reading had somehow fallen by the wayside. I picked a time when the library was least crowded, Tuesday, 11 in the morning. I put on my new jeans. New to me, I'd bought them at a thrift store for $7, and a gray t-shirt. I tied a light scarf around my neck to hide my wrinkles. Now, I tried to dress differently than before. No colorful blouses, no comfortable but gaudy shoes. Nothing that reminded me of the old Merle Taggart. The Paducah Library was in an old red brick building with columns at the entrance and wide steps. I've been here dozens of times, bringing Janine and Fletcher here when they were little. Later, taking books for my grandchildren. But today I felt strange here, almost like a criminal returning to the scene of a crime. Inside, almost nothing had changed over the years. The same tall wooden shelving, the same dark wood tables, even the smell was the same: paper, dust, and silence. I walked past the front desk, nodded to a young librarian I didn't know, and headed for the fiction section. I was just leafing through a collection of Flannery O'Connor's short stories when I heard a familiar voice. "Mrs. Palmer, isn't that you?" I slowly looked up from my book. Standing before me was Vivian Phelps, my neighbor on Woodland Drive, a tall, thin woman with a sharp nose and always perfectly styled gray hair. She lived 3 houses down from us and knew all the neighborhood gossip. We were never particularly close, but sometimes exchanged recipes or gardening tips across the fence. "Vivian," my heart raced, but I tried to stay calm. "Hello? Oh my God, it's really you." She splayed her hands. "But what's wrong with your hair? And the..." She looked at my clothes with ill-concealed bewilderment. I decided to change my look. I forced myself to smile. It was about time. "But where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. Your children come every day, asking about you. The police came by, asking the neighbors. Everyone thought something had happened to you." I didn't expect such a reaction. To be honest, I thought they'd be glad I was gone, that maybe they'd notice after a few days and think I'd gone on vacation. "I was just, taking a little vacation," I said, trying to sound casual. "I thought I'd take some time to myself." "A vacation?" Vivian raised an eyebrow incredulously. "Without telling anyone? Fletcher was even in the river looking for your body, and Janine put up notices all over town with your picture on them. They thought you were, you know, that I killed myself. I finished it for her. Or that you'd had a seizure and were lying alone somewhere, unaided." She lowered her voice. "Given your age and all." "I'm only 67, Vivian." I felt annoyed. "I'm not that decrepit." Of course, of course." She waved her hands. "I have to call Fletcher. He'll be so happy to know you're okay." She was already pulling her phone out of her bag when I grabbed her arm. "Please don't." "What?" She stared at me in amazement. "Don't call him. Don't tell him you saw me." "But why? He's your son. He's worried." I looked around. There was no one in this corner of the library, but I lowered my voice anyway. "We, had a fight. A very serious one. I need time to think it over." Vivian stared at me, clearly not believing a word of it. Then her eyes widened at the sudden realization. "Do you have someone?" she whispered. "A man?" "What?" "No." I almost laughed at the absurdity of the suggestion. "Then why are you hiding from your own children? It's not like you, Merle." I sighed. Vivian has always been too curious, and if I don't give her some kind of explanation, she's sure to call Fletcher as soon as I leave. "They think I'm getting dementia," I said finally. "They want to put me in a nursing home, and I'm not ready. I need to prove that I can live on my own." Vivian groaned, pressing her palm to her mouth. "Oh, you poor thing. But is this the right way? Running away? They probably think it only confirms their fears." Her words made sense, but I wasn't about to admit it. "Please, Vivian, give me a little more time. I'll contact them myself when I'm ready." She hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to help the family search and respecting my request. "Okay," she finally said, "but only because you've always been a good neighbor, and you have to promise to call them soon. They're really worried." "I promise," I lied without hesitation. "And another thing," she leaned closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "They found something in your house, something important. I heard Fletcher talking about it with Tammy on the porch. He said it could change everything." My stomach clenched. What could they have found? Old letters? Financial documents? I'd always been very careful with papers. Everything important was kept in a special folder in the bottom drawer of my dresser. Do you know what? I asked, trying to sound indifferent. No, but they often go up to the attic. I've seen them taking boxes out of the attic. The attic? I hardly ever went up there, except to put away Christmas decorations and old baby things I couldn't bring myself to throw away. And Kenneth hadn't gone up there at all for the last 15 years because of back problems. Probably just old photo albums, I said, but I was already getting anxious inside. Maybe. Vivian didn't look convinced. In any case, you should contact them, soon, and if you need help, thank you, Vivian. I'll be fine. She talked some more about the neighbors, how Mrs. Donovan had broken her hip falling down the stairs, and how the new family on the corner had installed a terribly bright garden lantern that shone all night. I nodded and acquiesced, but my thoughts were far away. What could my kids find in the attic? And why was it so important? Finally, Vivian left, making me promise once again to call my children. I waited until she left the library, then hurried to the exit on the other side. All the way to the motel, I thought about what Vivian had said. My kids were looking for me. The police were involved. They thought I might have killed myself or gotten into trouble, and they found something in the attic, something important. In my room, the first thing I pulled out of my bag was my old cell phone. I hadn't turned it on since I disappeared, afraid I might be tracked. Now, after so many weeks, that seemed unlikely, but I still felt a strange unease as I pressed the power button. The phone booted up, showing almost a full charge. I'd plugged it into charge before leaving the house. As soon as there was a signal, it started vibrating with notifications. Missed calls, messages, voicemail. I opened the call log and froze. 56 missed calls, most from Janine and Fletcher, but there were others from Tammy, my friend Dolores, even a few from unfamiliar numbers. Then I checked the text messages. There were almost as many of them as there were calls. Mom, where are you? Call me. From Janine, sent the day after I disappeared. Mom, if you're mad, I understand, but at least text me that you're okay. From Fletcher the next day. Grandma, please come back. Mommy cries all the time. From Amberly, the same one who told me to clean up. The messages grew more desperate each day. Mom, the police say if you don't show up within 48 hours, they'll start an official search. Please call me. We found your purse at home and all your papers are there. Where could you have gone without them? Mom, if you're reading this, know that we're all terribly sorry about what happened at the restaurant. Please come home. The last message was from Janine, sent just 2 days ago. Mom, we need to talk about what we found in the attic. It's very important. Call me as soon as you can. I put the phone away, feeling dizzy. They were really worried. They were really looking for me. And from the messages, they weren't angry. They were worried. It didn't fit into my picture of the world, in which I was just a burden to them, a person who ruined their lives with my concern. But what had they found in the attic? What could possibly be so important? I decided to check my voicemail. There were 21 unheard messages, the limit of what my old phone could hold. The messages continued in the same vein, becoming more and more disturbing. Janine was crying in one of them, begging me to call. Fletcher sounded tense, saying they'd called every hospital and morgue. And then the tone of the messages began to change. Mom, we found your jewelry box. All the jewelry is still there, but Grandma and Grandpa's picture is gone. Did you take it with you? What's going on? The police say you probably left voluntarily. They checked the security tapes at the bank. You withdrew all the money and said you were going to your sister's in Florida. But you don't have a sister, Mom. What's going on? I felt myself blush with shame. They found proof of my deception. They know I lied to the bank. That I was planning an escape. The last messages were the strangest. Mom, we found something in the attic. Something you never told us about. We need to talk about it. Mom, it's important. What we found, it has to do with Dad, and to that incident at the hospital that he never talked about. Call me. And finally, the last message, left by Janine just yesterday. Mom, I don't know if you're getting these messages, but if you are, you should know that we found what Dad left in the attic, an old safe behind the chimney. We're trying to open it, but we need the code. Fletcher thinks it's connected to that patient who disappeared 20 years ago. Do you remember when Dad started drinking? If you know anything about that, please call. It could be dangerous for all of us. I dropped the phone like it was burning my hand. The safe? Behind the chimney in the attic? I'd never seen any safe. And what patient was Janine talking about? 20 years ago. It was around the time Kenneth started to drift away from me, when he started drinking more than usual and often didn't come home from work. I thought he was having an affair, but I never found any proof. And then he suddenly changed. He quit drinking, became more attentive to his family, even started going to church on Sundays. But he never went up to the attic. Never. Even when he had to get the Christmas decorations out, he always asked me or the kids to do it. I thought it was because of his back. He had an old injury from the shipyard that bothered him in wet weather. But what if the reason was something else? What if he was afraid I might find something up there? I picked up my phone and listened to the last message again. Patient who disappeared 20 years ago. Baptist Hospital of Western Kentucky, where I worked, had never had a patient disappearance case. At least, I'd never heard of one. But I worked mostly in the maternity ward and occasionally substituted for co-workers in trauma. And Kenneth. Kenneth would sometimes come and pick me up after his shift, sometimes waiting in the lobby, talking to security guards he knew. Something cold and heavy sank into my stomach. I suddenly remembered an incident that had almost been erased from my memory by the passage of time. The night Kenneth had come to pick me up unusually late, around 2 in the morning, even though my shift ended at midnight. He was pale, his hands were shaking, and he smelled of whiskey. I figured he'd just had a drink with his friends and forgot the time. He barely spoke all the way home, and then he disappeared for 2 days. He came back unshaven, red-eyed, smelling of sweat and alcohol. I gave him a scandal, and he yelled back, accusing me of something inarticulate. Then he suddenly went quiet, sat on the couch, and burst into tears. The only time I'd ever seen my husband cry. The next morning, the news was talking about a missing man, a homeless man who had been seen in the hospital neighborhood. The police didn't look too hard to find him. After all, homeless people often move from place to place. Could it be? No, that's impossible. Kenneth could be moody, sometimes rude, but he wasn't capable of violence, wasn't capable of hurting someone. Or was he? I suddenly realized that I knew almost nothing about the man I'd lived most of my life with. The man I thought I loved. What was in that safe in the attic? And why did Janine think it could be dangerous for all of them? I had to find out. I had to go back to my house and find that safe, find out what Kenneth had been hiding all these years. But to do that, I'd have to confront my kids, explain to them why I disappeared, see the disappointment and hurt in their eyes. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but there didn't seem to be a choice. For 2 days, I couldn't make up my mind. I replayed Janine's voicemails in my head, trying to remember anything about the missing patient, the safe in the attic, Kenneth's strange behavior. My memory threw up only scraps. My husband's tense face, the smell of whiskey, his silence on the way home. In the end, I decided I had to see that safe with my own eyes. Perhaps the children had exaggerated something. Maybe it was just some old documents Kenneth didn't want to talk about. I chose Wednesday, a day when Fletcher usually worked late and Janine took the kids to practice. I wore the most inconspicuous of clothes, dark jeans, a gray hooded sweatshirt, sneakers. I even pulled up my baseball cap to hide my face from nosy neighbors. My old house was about a 40-minute walk from the motel, but I decided not to take any chances. I took a bus to downtown, then got on another bus that took me to a supermarket 3 blocks away. From there, I walked, looking around. Woodland Drive greeted me with the quiet of a fall day. Most of the neighbors were at work at the time, except for Mrs. Donovan across the street, who was hanging laundry on a walker. I quickly ducked past the hedge so she wouldn't see me. At the house, I froze, feeling a strange excitement. It looked exactly the same, 2 stories, with peeling white paint, with 3 steps leading up to the porch, with the bed of dahlias I'd planted last spring. Only the mailbox was empty. Someone had picked up the mail, and the grass on the lawn had been recently cut. The key was still under the flower pot where I'd left it. I quickly unlocked the door and slipped inside, closing it behind me as quietly as possible. There was a strange odor in the house, a mixture of mustiness and something foreign, unfamiliar. It was as if no one had lived here for a long time, but occasionally someone came in. The first thing I noticed was the emptiness. Usually there was a collection of framed photos on the wall, my pride, a chronicle of our family life. Now the wall was bare, with dark spots where the frames had once hung. In the corner of the living room, where my favorite ficus used to stand, was a gaping void. The rocking chair my children had given me for my 60th birthday was gone, and the table by the window where I kept my collection of glass figurines was gone, too. I walked slowly into the kitchen. There were fewer changes here, the same old cabinets, the same stove with the malfunctioning right burner. But my set, which I had inherited from my mother 12 plates with blue floral designs, had disappeared from the glass cabinet. They were selling off my things. My life. I climbed the stairs to the second floor and peered into the bedrooms. Janine's room looked untouched. Fletcher's room, which served as my closet, had clearly been rummaged through. Boxes were moved, some open, things scattered. My bedroom looked much the same, but the bed was neatly made, not the way I usually did it. On the bedside table were fresh flowers in a small vase. It was as if someone had been waiting for me to return or preparing for a memorial service. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I opened my closet. Most of my clothes were still there, though some of my newer, more expensive clothes were gone. The dresser drawer where I kept my papers was in chaos. Someone had obviously been looking for something. Finally, I came to the door leading to the attic. It was at the end of the hallway, small and inconspicuous. I pulled a cord, and a folding ladder extended from the ceiling. It wasn't easy with my arthritis, but I managed, gritting my teeth against the pain in my knees. The attic was dark and dusty, with a small window through which dim light shone. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and looked around. Most of the attic was filled with boxes and old furniture. In the corner was a crib where both of my kids slept. Next to it was Fletcher's bicycle, an old suitcase we'd gone on vacation to the coast with, boxes labeled Christmas, schoolwork, photo albums. But I was interested in the chimney, an old brick chimney running through the center of the attic. I pointed the flashlight beam in that direction and saw that someone had moved the boxes, clearing a space around it. There were footprints on the floor, shoe prints in the dust, clearly recent. I stepped closer. The chimney was wide, made of red bricks, blackened by time and soot. On the south side, the bricks looked different, cleaner, lighter, as if they'd recently been taken out and put back in. I ran my hand over the bricks and felt one of them wobble. I pulled on it, and it came easily out of the brickwork. Behind it was another, just as unstable. After pulling out 5 or 6 bricks, I saw this, a metal safe built into the wall of the chimney. The safe was old, with a mechanical code lock. It wasn't very big, about 30 by 30 centimeters, There were scratches on its surface and the marks of some kind of tool. Apparently, someone had tried to open it by force. I'd never seen this safe before. I'd never even known it existed. Kenneth installed it without a word to me, and he'd been hiding something in it all these years. I remembered how Kenneth had changed since that incident, how he started drinking every night, how he snapped at me when I asked him anything, how he slept on the couch for weeks, refusing to come up to our bedroom, and then, just as suddenly, he stopped drinking. He became quiet, thoughtful. He started going to church, even though he'd been indifferent to religion before. And one more detail. A year before he died, Kenneth suddenly started saving money. When I asked him why, he said, "For a rainy day, Merle, in case something happens to me and you have to live alone." I studied the lock of the safe, a standard 3-digit combination lock. I tried the date of our wedding, 0612. It wouldn't budge. His date of birth, 0325. Nothing. The children's birth dates, our house number, the last digits of his social security. Nothing worked. I sat on the dusty floor of the attic, feeling tired and frustrated. What am I doing? Sitting in a house that's no longer mine, trying to open the safe of a husband who died 10 years ago, hoping to find answers to questions I'm not even sure I want to ask. I glance at the lock again. 3 digits. What else could be important to Kenneth? And then it hit me. His military ID number. Kenneth served in Vietnam, was wounded, received a medal. He rarely talked about the war, but he remembered his military ID number by heart and sometimes repeated it when he was nervous. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. We used those numbers as a password for several accounts. 573, the last 3 digits of his military number. I turned the dial left to 5, then right to 7, then left again to 3, and pulled the handle. The safe opened with a quiet click. Inside was a package wrapped in wax paper and tied with twine. On top was an envelope with my name written in Kenneth's familiar handwriting. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a piece of paper, yellowed with time, with the date in the top corner, the 23rd day of April, 2004, 3 years before Kenneth's death. Dear Merle, the letter began. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you somehow found the safe. I had hoped that this would never happen, that you'd never know the truth about that night, about what I did. I'm not a good man, Merle, not the man you thought I was. But I loved you and the kids more than anything in the world. And everything I did, good and bad, I did for you. There's proof in the bag. I kept it as insurance. If anything happens to me, if someone comes after me, use them. They'll protect you and the kids. But if I die and no one bothers you, burn the package without opening it. Don't read what's inside. Don't look at the pictures. Some things are better left unsaid, especially about the people you love. Forgive me if you can. Kenneth. I reread the letter twice, trying to comprehend. What did Kenneth mean? What was the evidence? I picked up the package. It was light, but there was clearly something inside, something hard, rustling when I moved it. Part of me wanted to follow Kenneth's advice to burn it without opening it, to keep my husband's memory untarnished. But another part of me demanded the truth, no matter how bitter it was. I started to untie the twine when the front door slammed downstairs. Grandma? It was Amberly's voice. Are you in here? I froze, clutching the bag in my hands. Grandma, I know you're home. I saw you come in. Please come down. I'm alone. Mom doesn't know I'm here. I quickly slipped the package and letter into my sweatshirt pocket, slid the safe back into the wall, and hastily stacked the bricks. Then I cautiously made my way down the stairs, writhing against the pain in my knees. Amberly stood in the hall, shuffling nervously from foot to foot. She was wearing her school uniform, a blue skirt and white blouse. Her hair, which she usually straightened, was gathered into a ponytail. Grandma! She rushed to me, hugging me tightly. You're back. We were so worried. I pulled away carefully, not knowing what to say. Amberly, how did you get here? Aren't you supposed to be at school? It's a shortened day. I saw you from the window of the school bus. You were walking down Woodland Drive in that funny hat, but I recognized you anyway, and I asked the driver to stop. Does your mom know you're here? No, I didn't call her. She would have rushed over and ruined everything. She always messes things up. I sighed. Janine and Amberly had always been like cat and dog, too similar to get along. Amberly, I can't stay. I just came to pick up some things. But why? Why did you leave? Because of what I said. I didn't mean it, I swear. I was angry and stupid and everyone was yelling and it's not because of you, sweetie. I stroked her head like I used to do when she was little. It's not your fault. It's just, sometimes grown-ups need space, time to think. But why didn't you call? Mom cried every day. Dad went to the river and looked for she stammered. I know, and I'm sorry I made you worry, but I wasn't ready to talk to you. Because of what's in the attic? She suddenly asked. Because of the safe? I froze. You know about the safe? Everyone does. Dad found it when he was looking through your old photo albums. Thought it might have a clue where you'd gone. He tried to open it, but he couldn't. Then Uncle Austin and Uncle Ray came over, and they tried together. But the lock is too strong. Uncle Austin and Uncle Ray are old friends of Kenneth's from the shipyard. I always disliked them, especially Ray with his greasy jokes and little piggy eyes. What does Mom say about the safe? She thinks there's something bad in there, something to do with Grandpa, something to do with what happened at the hospital. What exactly is she saying about the hospital? I don't know exactly. She doesn't talk in front of me, but I heard her fighting with Dad, yelling that she didn't want anything to do with it, that if it's what she thinks it is, she better never open the safe, never find out the truth. So Janine suspected something, knew or guessed what happened 20 years ago. What about the house? I see some things are missing. Yeah, Amberly grimaced. Dad and Uncle Austin took some stuff. Dad says it's for safekeeping until they decide what to do with the house. But I heard him tell Mom that there's good money to be made in antiques and that if you didn't show up in 6 months, they could sell the house. So I was right. They were already dividing my inheritance, selling my life off piece by piece. Amberly, I have to go, I said, feeling the bag in my pocket like it was burning a hole. And you can't tell anyone you saw me. But why? Grandma, please stay, or take me with you. I can't live with Mom anymore. She hates me. She doesn't hate you, honey. She just doesn't always know how to show her love. I hugged my granddaughter. I'll get back to you, I promise, soon. But right now, I just need a little more time. You promise? Honestly? Honestly? I promise. I kissed her forehead and walked quickly out of the house, without looking back. I felt like if I looked at her again, I wouldn't be able to leave. Outside, I pulled my cap down and walked quickly away from the house, clutching in my pocket the bag of secrets my husband had kept for 20 years. A secret that could change everything. Back at the motel, I locked the door with the chain and pulled down the curtains. The package found in the safe lay on the bed like a time bomb. I stared at it for almost an hour, hesitant to untie the string. Kenneth's words from the letter echoed in my head. Burn the package without opening it. Don't read what's inside. Don't look at the pictures. But I should have known, had to understand what had happened 20 years ago, and why it was so important now. Finally, I untied the twine and unfolded the waxed paper. Inside were 3 items: an old camera with film, a small leather-covered notebook, and a hospital badge with my name and picture on it. Edgar Holt, orderly, the name tag read. The man in the picture was young with dark hair and cold eyes. I'd never seen him in our hospital, But that wasn't surprising in such a large facility. Many of the staff remained strangers. I opened the notebook. The pages were scrawled in unfamiliar handwriting, sharp, angular, with heavy pressure. Dates, names, amounts, records of patients, their medications, special procedures. On the last page, an address in Paducah and an amount, 20,000 cash, monthly, and a camera, an old model with film inside. I couldn't develop it here, but something told me the pictures were evidence of what had happened at the hospital 20 years ago. I carefully packed everything back into the bag and hid it under the mattress. Then I sat down at a small table by the window and started writing. I needed a plan. I couldn't hide anymore. The next morning, I called Janine. Hello? Her voice sounded hoarse, like she had just woken up or was crying. It's me, I said simply. The silence on the other end was so long I thought the connection had been cut. Mom? She finally said. Is that really you? Yes, honey, it's me. She burst into tears, unable to say a word. I waited for her to calm down, feeling my own heart breaking for the pain I'd caused her. Where are you? She finally asked. What happened? Why did you leave? I can't explain over the phone, I replied. But I want to meet you, all of you, tonight. Of course, we can come anywhere. No, I interrupted her. I'll come home, 7 o'clock. Make sure everyone's there. You, Fletcher, Tammy, the kids, and no one else, especially Austin and Ray. But they wanted to help with no one else, Janine. My voice got hard. Or I'm not coming. She agreed. I asked her not to tell Amberly I'd called. I didn't want her to give away that she'd already seen me. Then I hung up, feeling my fingers shake. I spent the rest of the day getting ready for tonight. I showered, washed, and styled my hair. I put on the clean blouse and pants I'd bought at the thrift store. They were newer and better than the ones I'd taken from home. I wanted to look different than they remembered me. I wanted them to see that I had changed. At 7:30, I hailed a cab to Woodland Drive. Sitting in the back seat, I stared at the streets of Paducah floating by, painfully familiar and yet seemingly foreign. Strange how in just a month, the perception of a place one has lived in all their life can change. The cab stopped a block before my house. I asked the driver to do so. I didn't want the neighbors to see me arriving by cab. I walked the rest of the way, feeling the anxiety building with each step. There were two cars in the driveway, Fletcher's old pickup and Janine's minivan. The lights were on in the windows, and I could see silhouettes moving inside. They were waiting for me. I didn't ring the bell or knock. I just opened the door with my key and stepped into the lobby. The voices from the dining room abruptly stopped. Footsteps sounded, and Janine appeared in the doorway. She froze when she saw me with a new haircut, unfamiliar clothes, a straight back, and a determined look. Mom? She whispered. Hello, Janine, I said calmly. She rushed toward me, hugging me so tightly I could hardly breathe. Behind her, Fletcher appeared, gaunt, with circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. He stepped forward hesitantly, not knowing how to react. Grandma! Amberly rushed out of the dining room, followed by the younger grandchildren, all of them clamoring around me, touching me, as if they couldn't believe I was real. Only Tammy remained standing in the dining room doorway, arms crossed over her chest, her expression impenetrable. Let's go to the dining room, I said, gently releasing myself from the embrace. We need to talk. They parted to let me pass and followed me like children following the gamel-pied piper. The table was set in the dining room. They must have been preparing for dinner, not knowing if I would show up. My place at the head of the table was set, as if I'd been expected every day for weeks. I sat down, gesturing for them to do the same. Janine and Fletcher sat on either side of me, the kids farther back. Tammy remained standing against the wall as an observer. I found the safe, I said without preamble, and I opened it. Fletcher inhaled sharply. Janine turned pale. Do you know what's in there? Fletcher asked tensely. Yes. I pulled a bag out of my bag and placed it on the table. Evidence of what happened at Baptist Hospital 20 years ago. What happened to the missing patient? What patient? Fletcher looked genuinely surprised. Don't pretend. I looked him in the eye. Janine had mentioned him in the message, the homeless guy who'd been seen outside the hospital. The one who disappeared the night your father came to pick me up later than usual, drunk and with shaking hands. Janine covered her face with her hands. I always knew something was wrong, she whispered. Dad changed after that night. He started drinking, snapping at me, disappearing. Then he quit abruptly, started going to church. I don't understand. Fletcher shook his head. What does that have to do with a homeless guy? And what could Dad do about it? Kids, Tammy said suddenly, leaning away from the wall. Go to your rooms, now. But Mom? Amberly started. Now. Something in her voice made the children obey without further objection. When they left, she came to the table and sat down across from me. You didn't tell them, I stated, looking at Tammy. But you knew, both of us knew. Knew what? Fletcher raised his voice. What are you talking about? That your father was involved in the murder, I said calmly, though I was shaking inside. That he was helping to dispose of the body, and that he was paid by the people who ran the illegal experiments at the hospital. There was silence, so deep that I could hear the clock ticking in the living room and the distant barking of the dog outside. Bullshit, Fletcher finally exhaled. My father wasn't a killer. He was just a simple shipyard worker, an honest man. Shut up, Fletcher, Tammy said suddenly. Just shut up. She's right. He turned to his wife, mouth open in amazement. What? Austin told me? Tammy looked at her hands. When we found the safe and couldn't open it, he said that your father didn't just work at the shipyard, that he and Ray sometimes did special assignments for Dr. Woods, for money. Dr. Woods. I remembered that name, the chief surgeon at our hospital, always impeccably dressed, with gold cufflinks and a condescending smile. He had left Paducah about 15 years ago to take a high position in the State Medical Association. Now, as far as I knew, he was an influential man in the state government. Yes, Tammy nodded. Dr. Woods and the others were doing some kind of experiments on the homeless, something with new drugs that weren't approved, paid them small amounts of money to participate in the studies. But sometimes things went wrong. And my husband helped cover it up. I finished for her. It wasn't just your husband. Tammy looked at me pointedly. Half the hospital's management was in on it. Money was coming in from everywhere, from pharmaceutical companies, from government grants, millions of dollars. And you wanted to use the evidence from the safe to blackmail them. I nodded at the package. That's why you were so actively looking for me, not out of concern, because of this. That's not true, Janine exclaimed. We were really worried. We thought something had happened to you. But when we found the safe, our priorities changed. I looked her in the eye. Didn't they? She lowered her gaze, and that was more eloquent than any confession. We're in debt, Mom, she said quietly. Ben has a gambling problem and hasn't paid child support in months. Amberly has to go to college in 3 years. I'm barely making ends meet. And we have a mortgage we can barely afford, Fletcher added. And Shay needs a speech therapist, and the car broke down, and the roof leaks. And you decided blackmail was the best way out. I shook my head. That evidence of a 20-year-old crime would solve your financial problems. You don't understand, Tammy stepped forward. This isn't about some petty crime. These people are still in power. Dr. Woods is now the governor's health advisor. Dr. Lamb is the head of the state medical board. They'll pay anything to keep this from coming out. And you're willing to shut up for any money? I looked at them bitterly. To let them continue to be in power, to make decisions that affect the lives of thousands of people? That's your price? What's the alternative? Fletcher raised his voice. To go into the police force after 20 years with evidence my father may have stolen? They'd just laugh at us. Or worse, Janine added quietly. These people are powerful, Mom. They have connections. If we try to expose them, they'll do to us what they did to that homeless man, Tammy finished. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the anger growing inside. Not at the doctors and administrators who were conducting illegal experiments, not at my husband who helped cover up their crimes, but at my own children who were willing to continue the cycle of corruption and evil for money. So that's what you people are, I said quietly. This is what I have taught you. This is the legacy I'm leaving behind. Mom, don't be dramatic. Janine rolled her eyes. We're just trying to survive. Survive? I laughed bitterly. You have a roof over your head, food on the table, a job. You have children who love you no matter what. You have everything most people can only dream of. And you're talking about surviving? You don't understand. Fletcher shook his head. Times have changed. Things have gotten more expensive. There's more competition. We can't afford to be decent people, I interrupted him. Do the right thing, even if it's hard. To set an example of honesty and courage for your children. Stop lecturing us. Tammy flared up. You ran away, disappeared for a month, made us think you were dead. And now you come back as a saint on a white horse to judge us? I came back to right a wrong, I replied. Mine and your father's, to do what needs to be done. I opened my bag and took out 3 envelopes. What are these? Fletcher asked. Copies of everything in the safe. I placed the envelopes on the table. One was sent to the federal prosecutor's office in Louisville, one to the editor of the Paducah Sun, and the third to a reporter from a national publication that's been investigating corruption in the medical field for years. If something happened to me, if I suddenly disappeared, this evidence would become public. Tammy turned pale. You're crazy, she whispered. They're coming for us. The children. Not if we go to the authorities first. I looked her in the eye. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to Louisville to the FBI office. I'll tell you everything I know. I'll give you the original evidence. I'm going to ask for protection for you and the kids. And you think they'll just give it? Fletcher shook his head. Mom, you're naive. That's not how the system works. The system works that way when people make it work. I stood up. I've already made an appointment. The agent will be waiting for me tomorrow morning at 10. You can come with me, or you can stay here and wait for the consequences. It's your choice. I was on my way out, but Janine grabbed my arm. Wait, you can't just leave. This is your home too. No. I gently released my hand. Not anymore. I got an apartment on the other side of town, small but clean, and I got a job at the library Betsy. The head librarian was very understanding. But all your stuff is here, your whole life. My life is wherever I decide to build it. I smiled sadly at her. I've realized this over the last month. We are not attached to places or things. We are not even tied to the past. We are free to choose who we want to be today and tomorrow. You can't just erase us from your life. Fletcher's eyes filled with tears. We're your children. We're your family. I'm not erasing you. I walked over to him and touched his cheek. I will always love you. I will always be your mother. But I will no longer be your maid, your ATM, or your victim. I will be Merle Taggart, a woman who, at 67, found the courage to start over. I walked down the hall and stopped at the stairs. Children, I called out, come down and say goodbye to your grandmother. They came down in a bunch Amberly, Lawson, Shay, Rowan, and little Willow. I hugged each one. whispering in Amberly's ear, "Be strong, you'll get through this," and promised Willow a new doll for her birthday. Then she stepped out onto the porch, breathed in the cool evening air. The sky above Paducah was sprinkled with stars, as bright as I hadn't seen them in years. "Grandma!" Amberly came running after me. "Wait, are you really? I mean, tomorrow. Are they really going to jail? Those doctors?" "Maybe." I looked at her seriously. "Or maybe the statute of limitations has expired for some crimes. But the truth will come out. And that's important, you know? The truth is always important, even if it comes late. What's going to happen to Dad? What happens to Mom? It depends on their choices," I shrugged. "Each of us is always faced with choices, Amberly. Every day. And who we become is determined by those choices, not by circumstances." She nodded, looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her face before. Respect. "You've changed, Grandma?" "Yes," I smiled. "And you will change too. Many times throughout your life. Just try to change in the right way." I kissed her forehead and walked down the path to the wicket without looking back. I knew they were standing there, my children and grandchildren, perhaps gathered together under one roof for the last time. Tomorrow everything would change, for all of us. But I was ready for that change. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, truly me. Not a mother, not a grandmother, not a widow, not a retired nurse. Just Merle, a woman who found the strength to burn bridges and move forward. I reached the corner of the street and stopped at an old maple tree that remembered me as a young bride. Its leaves burned scarlet in the light of the street lamps, ready to snap and fly away with the first strong wind. "Goodbye," I whispered, not knowing whether I was saying goodbye to my home, my past life, or the woman I had been all these years. Then I turned and walked away into the new life I'd chosen for myself.